from the crypt.
Hello, boys and ghouls. Welcome to episode 107 of Dads from the Crypt, Tales from the Crypt podcast. My name is Jason. Tonight, I'm joined by Mondo.
Hello.
Hello. Jody is somewhere on vacation, but he may pop in, or may not.
I think he's in
To be
Florida
determined.
at the beach.
Oh, well. I mean, it's got to be like 10:30 there, so I don't know how late you stay at beaches in Florida, but who knows. But tonight we have a very special guest. Joining us is Spooky Sarah from the Final Girls Feast podcast. Welcome.
Hello, hello.
How are you?
I'm living the dream.
Living the dream. So tell us about your podcast and also tell us about your website, Geeks Who Eat.
Okay, yeah. I co-host Final Girls Feast, where my co-host Carrie and I have backgrounds in food content creation, otherwise known as food blogging, but I'm not a blogger. And she and I, when COVID came about, wanted something to do, and so we decided to talk about food and horror movies. And
Excellent.
so, 60 something episodes later, we are cruising along and just talking. We do some like food specific movies, and then we also do movies that don't have food, like they're not like about food, but they have food heavily present in them. And most horror movies actually do, believe it or not. So we go through that, we break down the food. I am notorious for pausing and listing every can, bag, and pouch on a shelf that is on our Final Girls Feast, what we call the bingo card, as well as talking about Disney randomly. And then also, as I mentioned, I have a food site with my husband, which is on a semi hiatus. We kind of just like get to it when we get to it because he works a lot. So but we create recipes based on movies, books, comics, etc. We have done, lots of horror stuff, and yeah, so always doing stuff.
So my question is, did you do an episode for the menu and how long is it?
We did do an episode for the menu, and my husband and I did 2 recipes for the menu.
Ooh.
And yeah, so actually that was a cool one because I actually got to go to the virtual press junket for that one.
Oh, cool.
And I don't know that they necessarily answered my question, but it was really cool just getting to sit there and listen to them all talk. That was, and my husband, even he does like minifigure painting and stuff. He sculpted and painted a pair of earrings for me of the memory chicken, which we actually,
that's cool.
And I turned them into earrings. So we did that, and we did all sorts of stuff. I even found the timer that they use in the movie, and that's an expensive timer, let me tell you. I bought it because I bought it on Amazon, and that's like a $60 timer for the kitchen. I'm like, how is a kitchen timer $60? But it was in the movie, so I had to have it.
Yeah, that's one of those movies I would love to like see like a commentary just on like a group of chefs, or like see like a 3-hour breakdown. So I'm sure there's so many details and things that are even in the background.
Yeah, they did have like I think it was the second AD was from Chef's Table, which is why the food looks beautiful in that movie.
Mm-hmm.
And Dominique Crenn was she was used a lot in the creation and stuff. So they did have food people on site doing a lot of that styling and creation.
Totally.
And they actually sent me a copy of the menu that is used in the movie, like not like a physical copy, but like a PDF of like what it basically what they printed.
That's cool. That's still super cool though.
And so I mean that movie was like my poor Searchlight rep here in town. Everybody's bugging him about like the next big, comic book movie. And I'm over there, so when am I hearing about the menu? What's going on with the menu? Do we have news about the menu? And it was a lot of he always laughs because I get excited about the not big releases
I love it.
in the way that people are like, oh, so am I getting in for Batman or am I getting in for the Flash? Or and I'm just like, I don't care about those.
It's funny though, because I think people like are really, I think people in those positions, they're really tickled to death when they meet people like you or people like that are horror fans that really love those smaller releases.
Oh yeah.
I always, I don't know if I ever talked about it on here, but I was working for another company. Michael Rooker one time came into our store to get his computer fixed or his device fixed. I can't give details on what he's trying to get fixed, but everyone's like, oh my God, it's I forgot his name from The Walking Dead. And he was,
Merle.
yeah, and he was drunk. So in Las Vegas, and not like shitty shit-faced drunk, but he was definitely, feeling pretty good. So I walked over to help him out. I said, man, I said, you're not, I said, you are, I said, you're Henry. And he goes, oh shit. And he got super excited because he goes, I know you're a fucking horror geek. He goes, because you called me Henry. And he goes, but he was just flattered that I knew him from something that wasn't Walking Dead.
That's cool.
And obviously this is pre-Peacemaker and all that stuff. This is the
yeah, just for going back a second, The Menu is one of the movies that stuck with me more than many that I can think of. Like, I think about that movie a lot.
It's a fantastic like piece of social commentary.
Right,
And
on many levels.
I love that movie so much. I was so excited when we did our episode. It was one of those situations where I was able to like have my press rep reach out to the press reps in North Carolina where my co-host is so she could get into an early screening, and I was like, yeah, I got Carrie into a screening too. Woo. And it was just very exciting, and I love The Menu. I think Searchlight did a lot of great horror last year.
Yeah.
And I mean, Fresh was incredible.
yes, Fresh is one of my favorites of the year. I loved Fresh.
And it's funny because I know someone who auditioned for it.
Oh wow.
And I met her because I was an extra on set of Scare Package 2.
What? That's cool. I love Scare Package and Scare Package too.
I'm I'm the Scare Package fan club president. So
what? That's amazing. Scare Package is near and dear to my. I love that movie and the second one.
I have as soon as we get off here, I will flip my camera and show you my little paper street pictures shrine that I have in the corner of my desk over here.
That's the horror anthology one. I haven't seen that one. Okay, well maybe we'll have to have you back for when we do that.
Oh yeah, Scare Package 2. I can talk for days.
And do Jason, if you haven't seen it, that'd be a really fun one to do.
It's when I heard about it, I'm like, when I knew we were going to do movies for the podcast, I'm like, wait, I'm going to hold off until we cover that one intentionally.
So there are a lot of people who didn't like Scare Package, and I call those people prudes. No, I'm just kidding. I know some smart people and some good people who didn't like that movie, but I just think it's just fun. It's just a fun movie. If you're expecting like a Citizen Kane movie, you're not going to get it. But if you want fun anthology, oh my God, it's so good. I love it.
The thing about Scare Packages is the first time I saw it was when it was on Joe Bob. And I was like, oh, this is a good movie. And then I watched it again for Final Girls Feast because we had Aaron and Jeremy on. And I watched it again and I was like, I like this more. And every time I watch that movie, I like it more. And I think that that's like the problem is that a lot of movie watchers, especially those of us who watch a ton of new stuff, like there's not always time to go back and revisit.
Right.
And so some people write things off because, oh, I didn't like it the first time, or oh, it was just okay the first time. Go back, try it again, see where you are in, a year or 6 months later. And you might find a new favorite movie.
I've always talked about that the same way to talk about listening to music. Like there are times when I'll put a new record on that I get, but then I'm distracted doing something else, and I don't really like spend time listening to it. But there's usually something, or in a movie that I didn't love. Sometimes there's something that makes me think, man, like I didn't love that movie, but I feel like I need to give it another shot, or because I like the soundtrack, I like X, Y, and Z in it, and maybe it was the mood I was in, et cetera, et cetera. So I do think
I was hangry.
Yeah. Well, also, if you're watching something on assignment or for a deadline, or just because I watched Cobwebs last week because Bloody Good Horror covered it, and I wanted to like listen to the episode, so like I kind of rushed through watching it while I was doing other stuff, and I was like, I fully absorbed it. But I think if I watched it again, I think I would like it better.
That's one that I saw in the theater, and I was like, okay, I really like this, but it's not perfect. But then it stuck with me, and I realized, like, probably last week, I was thinking about it. I was like, you know what? I like that movie a lot more than I gave it credit for when I was like, it's a vibe. Like the
Yeah,
Cobweb is
it
really.
takes a while to ramp up, is why I decided.
I liked it better than Barbarian, which a lot of people compare
Wow.
it to. I did not like Barbarian. I am one of those few people that it did not work for me.
All
Maybe I was grumpy when I went in,
right.
but like I just it's like a very popular 80s, well, semi-popular 80s movie that
Mhm.
I won't spoil for people who haven't seen it because I'm anti-spoiler, but
Right.
I think that movie is a better version of this. And so I
Ooh.
just
Afterwards, I'll have to ask you what movie that
Yeah,
is.
we'll talk
I
afterwards.
can't
But
think of it.
tonight we're talking Tales from the Crypt, and I hear that you're a bit of a fan. So tell us about your Crypt fandom.
So my Crypt fandom goes back to when I was young, and I used to stay up super duper late when it was on
Fox.
like was it Fox that it was
Yeah, it was on
on?
Fox
Yeah.
because it was because it was after Mad TV.
Yeah, but it was on really late, right? Like I'm
Yeah,
not crazy. It was super late, and I
it
used to
was like
stay up.
Mad TV, Tales from the Crypt, and SNL. Like
Okay.
all like kind of if you programmed it right, depending on where you live. At least that's what I did when I was a kid.
Because where I was, it was kind of like the last thing on before like infomercials almost.
Mm.
Like it was like 12 or 1 a.m. that it
Oh
was
wow,
on.
that's later than the
So, because
games
I
here.
used to watch, what I would do is I would watch Joe Bob on Monster Vision, and then I would go watch Tales from the Crypt.
Mm-hmm.
And so as a kid, I was just like, it was so cool. It was, none of my friends were spooky kids. So I thought I was hot shit because I was watching Tales from the Crypt and my mom didn't care. And I had a TV in my bedroom and, and my mom didn't care. She was like, whatever, enjoy your. And then I got to the age where I figured out how to record things on my VHS. I would record episodes so that I could rewatch them. And I loved Tales from the Crypt so much as a kid, and
Mm-hmm.
it was influential in my horror love.
That's
I will
awesome.
absolutely say that.
As a kid, were there any specific episodes that were your favorite?
I really liked I don't know the name of the episode, but it was sadly the one with Jeffrey Jones, which
Oh,
hasn't
the
the Egyptian mummy
Egyptian
one
one, yeah.
with Princess Nephra.
I think it was
And
Creep
yes.
Course.
what's that?
Creep Course,
Creep
Okay.
Course.
which is
And
which is an unfortunate name for that one.
that was my like jam as a kid. I mean, I, like most women my age, went through the Egyptology phase. And so I saw that episode when I was going through that. And so I really dug that one. The one with Leah Thompson where she wants to be pretty.
Oh yeah, that's a great one.
And that episode stuck with me quite a bit. And then the one what's the one with Zelda Rubinstein? I
The
don't.
Arrival. Yeah, that's a
one.
very good one. That's the one that kept me up at night when I was a kid. Like I would not turn off the lights after that one. With Robert Wagner and Twiggy, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
and Robert
Yeah.
Patrick.
Yeah. So I mean, I feel like I saw a lot of the same episodes as a kid because
Right.
Reruns.
Mhm.
So I am about due to go through my box set, which I'm so happy that I have.
Well, I know a great Tales from the Crypt podcast you can listen to
Oh, yeah.
as you watch through that.
I can get some commentary since we're never gonna get a nice commentary
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
from creators.
Okay, well, tonight we are reviewing season 7, episode 6 of Tales from the Crypt, the Cold War, just Cold War, which came out on May 31st, 1996. Since Jody hasn't showed up, Mondo, you get to do the plot synopsis.
Ooh, but this time I was prepared and I wrote out a plot. I wrote out some stuff.
It's also not the most complex. It's not the most complex episode.
I'm still gonna butcher a bunch because the hard part about synopsis is I think Jody had like this sweet spot where he like the perfect amount where I'm always like, oh, am I giving too much or too little? But we're gonna do our best here, guys. So bear with me. So we start off with Dr. Crypt Keeper, as I'm calling him, or would it be Dr. Keeper? Dr. Keeper. giving marriage counseling, and you see his his counseling certificate is from I Kill Him University.
Yes.
It just tickled me to death. He's giving marriage counseling between two people and just hitting all of his puns as usual. Even like I said this before, guys, even on episodes that aren't that great, the wraparounds are still top notch. So love the wraparound. And then we pan to this really cool. I love this. It's common in a lot of 80s and 90s movies that like the overview shot of the city, because they kind of give you the flavor of what's where you're at before it happens. So we get a really nice 80s/90s overview shot of I guess London, I can say, or somewhere in England, right?
I'd say London.
Is this London? It's probably somebody's probably yelling right now. They're like, it's the fucking London Bridge. It might have been the London Bridge. I don't know. Actually, that's in Lake Havasu. Fun fact, if you didn't know that, the London Bridge is in Lake Havasu, Arizona. But that's the whole term. Like, if you believe that I have a bridge I can sell you, it's because London sold that bridge to Arizona for some reason in pieces and shipped it over. If you know the story, it's a funny story. But anyhow, our lead characters we find out are Tammy, right? Or was it Tammy?
Tammy.
It's Cammy. See, my closed captioning said Tammy because I did. One thing about this episode I will say is sometimes with the accents, I did have to use some closed captioning just to see, to make sure I was getting some stuff right. So we have Tammy and Ford writing with a third person who is not in the episode for very long, named Cutter, and they're looking for a bank to rob. This scene somehow, for some reason, the car goes on way too long. Just saying, like, they're in this car for forever, just driving around trying to find a place. And meanwhile, Cammy's in the back seat, awkwardly stroking the shotgun for some unknown reason. So they pull up to a bank and find out it has now been turned into a laundromat. And then Cutter pulls his knife out and threatens Ford and puts it to his face. And Ford goes, just not the face, which will come into play later as Ford does say this several times throughout the episode. So they end up deciding to rob I guess a convenience store. And as they're going in, one of my favorite scenes is Cammy calls him a wanker. And he goes, what's a wanker? And I love it because like every English person has heard the term wanker and knows what a wanker is. So I just thought that was kind of a funny line. And then later on, Ford calls someone else a wanker and he says it all awkwardly. And I'm like, oh, it's a great line. And also Ford is played by the wonderful Ewan McGregor, who I actually did not recognize when I first saw him on screen.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because I'm more familiar with his later works. I'm so used to seeing him now in Star Wars and everything that he's definitely looks a little bit more street disheveled in this, which is good. It fits a character.
No, I was a big. We'll talk about a lot, but I was a big Train Spotting fan back in the days. So
yes. Well, yeah, he did have the Train Spotting look in this.
Yeah,
which some of the most hideous first 10 minutes of film ever, and I mean that in the most like the best way, as in it's a good movie, but God, like
it's a tough movie.
Yeah, that movie came out in what, 02?
No, it was like 96.
Oh shit,
95, 96.
I think the first time I watched is right after I had my daughter in 2002.
Oh, that's messed up time to have a kid. I had to watch that movie.
Yeah, I couldn't get through the first 10 minutes. I did shut it off. Anyhow, before the robbery starts, so I love the fact that he goes, only the bad guys have guns. What can go wrong?
Yeah.
So they bust into the shop and it's already being robbed by a couple of Asian motorcycle gang members, it looks like. And it gets kind of weird because this is where this episode gets kind of weird. They throw out this like this blatant racism where she keeps calling one of the Asian guys by, I forgot the name she called him, but it's obviously like a racial stereotype. But the fact that like he just called her out on it. He calls her a bitch. He goes, and she's like, and she calls him something. She goes, don't call me a bitch. And he's like, well, yeah, if you stop calling me this slur, then I'll stop calling you. Like they're negotiating as they have guns pointed at each other.
The name she uses, Kato, and I don't know if that's a slur or just stereotyping to that.
I would say stereotyping, like a reference to maybe.
I never heard that in that way before.
Ever watch The Green Hornet?
Well, yeah, I know who Kato is. I'm saying,
that's what I'm saying. As obviously, I wouldn't say a slur, but it's obviously something. It wasn't a polite comment. I'll put it that way.
No,
it was used in a manner that was derogatory.
Yes. No, it totally was. I'm not saying it was. I say I've never heard it used in that manner before.
Yeah, like Jason's like, damn it, should I stop calling Asian people Kato? Like, yes, Jason, you should. Don't do that.
I did notice that too.
So they end up having kind of they have guns drawn at each other, and then Cutter walks in and he gets shot like right away, and he's just down bleeding. And they have a shootout, which is really actually kind of a neat little shootout with some good gore effects in it.
Mm-hmm.
And they dispatch the motorcycle robbers, which I'm going to call them. I'll call them the motorcycle robbers. And then they escape in the car and they leave Cutter behind, who's dying. And one of my favorite scenes in the episode, he sits up like all bloody and tries to light a cigar and then just passes out. And he says like shit because he can't get a cigar to light, which is all that man wanted in his dying moments was to have a puff off his cigar. So sorry, Cutter. Goodbye, Cutter. So it looks like they drive back to their flat. And now you see Cammy and she's trying to fix Ford's bullet wound. And they start arguing. And then she's basically like, you've been shot before. And he goes, you know what it feels like to be shot? And he just straight up shoots her. Just shoots her right in the arm. And I love that the upstairs neighbor starts yelling at them to be quiet because he heard a gunshot, which is pretty great too. And they argue more.
Well, then he starts shooting up into his apartment.
Into the...
I'm like, they don't have 911?
They don't. I think it's
or whatever the equivalent is. I'm like,
yes.
Someone's shooting guns, especially in London. You'd think someone will call the cops.
They do have emergency services.
Yes.
And this is where it's again, you see Ford as almost this abusive kind of boyfriend because he's telling her, like, just get out, you'll come crawling back to me. And of course, he quotes some biblical verse to really sink it home, which is always the sign of someone who's not a favorable character. And then he goes, you'll be back. And I love the line she says, you better hope I don't because you'll regret it. So then we go into a bar and you see a new character who we find out later his name is Jimmy, looking kind of like Blade. I kind of like the I kind of like the look for the look of it. And he's asking the bartender about finding a good looking woman, saying he doesn't want a stripper, doesn't want someone who's tattooed up, et cetera, et cetera. And then he notices Cammy, who's rocking she's got a killer outfit, like a killer outfit on, with the latex boots and the corset and everything. A really cool outfit.
It's very like proto Harley Quinn in the Arkham Asylum, and also R.I.P. Aileen Sorkin, the voice of Harley Quinn, passed away this week. It's a real bummer.
That's right. Yeah, almost like a dominatrix outfit or something. And yeah, so they hit it off right away, and they're doing some awkward dancing, and it's kind of awkward. Like I love it because they're dancing. They're the only people in this bar dancing, and in the background, you almost see the bar guys trying to like clean the like just get the fuck out. Like we're trying to clean up. And they kept shooting also to this weird guy who was drunk at a table, and that never comes to play. So I was trying to figure out, was he like a friend of a friend, or just was there a reason he was on screen? Because at first glance, I thought it was Busey. And then it wasn't.
It looked like Gary Busey.
Yes,
I mean, maybe Gary Busey just wandered onto the set and just sat down like, okay, free cameo, we'll use it.
Dude, there is a show on Amazon Prime. It's called like Pet Court, and it's basically like a court TV program with Gary Busey as the judge. And granted, like I watched this before. Gary Busey has come out recently. He's a very problematic person and has done some very not okay things to people at conventions and stuff like that. But you would think this show would be batshit crazy, and it's surprisingly restrained and boring. I'm like, how do you have a court TV show of people arguing about animals and you have Gary Busey and it's boring? Like, it doesn't have to be good, but how the fuck is it boring? I don't know. But they ruined that show. Anyhow, they end up just kind of dancing, and she tells him like, I can change your reality. And I was like, huh. And then he goes, you'd be surprised at what I want to change. And I've been underground for so long. So they're already alluding to what we find out later on in the episode. And then we go back to the flat. We see Ford is coming home from the flat, probably out doing whatever it is that Ford does. He's arguing with his neighbor and calls him a wanker. And then he notices that something's just awry, like someone's in the apartment or in the flat. And he's calling out for Cammy. And then he pulls out a gun. He can't find anybody. And finally, Cammy comes out of the bathroom. And then he asks her, he goes, what have you been doing all day, baby? And then Jimmy steps out. I love this line. Jimmy steps out in a row. He's like, more like who?
That's slick. Real slick.
And then Ford laughs, and then he says, just get rid of him. Just get rid of that guy. And then he goes like, I can't believe you be with someone like that anyways. It makes me sick. And I was like, oh, fuck. Are we going this direction?
And then he says, you better shower twice.
Yes. And I'm like, oh. What I do love, though, is Jimmy's response immediately is like, fuck you, you racist piece of shit. I'm like, yes, okay, cool. Like terrible people can say terrible things as long as they're called out and we know they're terrible people. I'm okay with that in movies as long as they're called out as being terrible people. But then I love the fact he goes, it turns out that he's not upset because he's black. He's upset because he's a human. Because he thinks he's a human. He's like, no, it's us versus them. It's the live versus the dead. And then Jimmy shoots him. Not Jimmy, sorry. Ford shoots Jimmy. And then they're having this discussion. And they basically bring up now, you find out that Cammy and Ford are the undead or zombies. And they're not human. And they talk about how we're different than them. And then I love this scene where Jimmy just pops up and shows his fangs, goes full on vampire mode, and starts fucking these dudes up, and then starts telling them like, no, we're not. Like Cammy's trying to reason with them and telling him, hey, we're just like you. And he goes, no, you're not. You're the lesser species here because we are vampires and you're just zombies. You ever tasted zombie blood? It's putrid. You guys are dogs. You guys should bow to me. Then they distract him. Cammy stabs him like in the stomach with a spear kind of thing, like someone from the bedpost, I think. And then they end up threatening him with a shotgun and with a stake to the heart. Jimmy grabs them and pulls him out of the window with them, and then it fades away. When he pulls him out of the window, she does have a shotgun pointed, and the shotgun now gets pointed at Ford's face, which obviously one thing Ford doesn't want to have anything happen to is his face. So again, now we cut to a new scene, and we're back inside the same bar, it looks like, that we're in before. And I love how Cammy goes, did you know vampire can just turn into a bat in mid-flight and just fly away? Just fly away. And then it pans on Ford, and you see that Ford's face is pretty messed up. And where he's gotten shot, obviously, with the gun. And she helps him drink. He's having trouble talking. And they make a bunch of comments about his face and then fade away as Ford looks super depressed. And then we cut back to the Crypt Keeper, who's just giving us some more classic puns. As the camera pans out, you see that the couple he was counseling are both dead. They've both been stabbed in the back, which is impressive if the Crypt Keeper somehow shuffled out from behind his little desk and stabbed both of them in the back, which is pretty awesome. And he goes, well, I guess they're going to be headed to Divorce Corpse.
Thank you, Mondo.
Yeah.
All right.
Oh, there is one more line I have to say in this that also did not sit well with me, is that Cammy calls him Count Chocula.
Yeah, I was about to bring that up because I
Okay.
noticed it as a food reference, but also I was like, oh, that's cringy. No, we don't say that now. Like, oh,
Yeah, it's just but I've said this before that it's good, and we can look back at these shows and be like, ooh, that'd be problematic nowadays. It's good that it's problematic now and you couldn't get away. That's a good thing.
Yeah.
yeah.
It's a good thing that we have advanced to the point where now when we hear that, it raises our awareness like,
That's not okay to say.
All right. So Sarah, what do you think of this episode?
I problematic language aside, which I feel like I've been saying that I've been watching a lot of like 80s and 90s stuff for my horror movie challenge. And so I feel like I've been saying that a lot in my reviews is problematic language aside. I thought it was a fun episode. I'm not normally a vampire or zombie horror lover. So for me, I was like, this is like, I could take it or leave it in terms of an episode, but I did think that it was a fun little twist. And it did remind me, the end of the episode reminded me of Death Becomes Her.
Mm.
okay,
And,
yeah.
because Cammy's collarbone is sticking out. Like
Right.
she's not, her face isn't messed up, but her body is. And so they're kind of stuck together having to take care of each other. And so that was very Death Becomes Her, in my opinion. And I liked that. I think, the makeup work was incredible. So I mean, Ewan McGregor's face at the end was pretty gnarly. And I felt bad that he had to drink a martini through a straw.
Right.
But I hadn't seen this episode before though, so it was fun to see one that I had not seen.
No. If this one's been fitting into kind of the mold that we've been seeing a lot this season, where it's kind of a ho-hum, been there, done that, kind of like, this doesn't really feel like Crypt until like the last like minute when they spring something on us. Which I know Crypt is known for those twists, but it just feels really discordant with everything that happened before that. If I were to rework this episode, I would get rid of like the whole bank thing and make the twist in the middle and give us like few more, at least a couple more scenes of vampires versus zombies, or like of that once we realize that twist, to let that breathe some more.
Yeah.
Because like again, up to that point, I was like, there's nothing interesting really happening. This is just like a crime.
Yeah,
Uh,
they spend almost 10 minutes in the car.
yeah,
Like
and then
Yeah.
that car scene is almost a third of the episode.
right,
That-
and that bar scene just goes on way too long
Yeah.
too.
Agreed.
So they could have shown those pieces and give us what we want instead of like, oh, we're gonna give you a sexy, cool British crime, like Lock, Stock, Two Smoking Barrels type of thing, which is fine if that's what you're looking for. But again, when you're watching Crypt, you want those supernatural elements, and they barely give it to us. And like I was like, okay, I'm down for this once it happened, but then it was over way too quickly. So I would have rather everything, like all the elements are fine. The acting's good. I mean, Ewan McGregor is always charismatic. I've always been a big fan of his.
And I really like. I don't have the spreadsheet in front of me. I really like the actress too that played Cammy.
Yeah, so Cammy's played by Jane Horkins. She was in a ton of British stuff I don't know, but she's also some of the voices in Chicken Run, if you remember that, the claymation movie, and Absolutely Fabulous. So she was a really good actress. I liked her a lot. And then Jimmy is played by Colin Salmon or Salmon. He was in a bunch of the late 90s Bond movies, Tomorrow Never Dies, World Is Not Enough, Die Another Day. He was in some of the Resident Evil movies. It was also in Alien versus Predator. And then, of course, Cutter is played by John Salthouse, who was in the old school The Spy Who Loved Me. He was also in An American Werewolf in London. So he's got some horror cred. So this is one of those episodes that, like, I could see a much better episode if they just reworked a couple like plot things and gave us more, because I love zombies, but more in a more contemporary way. And actually, I like vampires just as long as they're not like the Dracula mythos, just a random vampire. Those are two things I like, and putting them together I thought was kind of cool. I like hierarchy and seeing how supernatural beings in the real world interact with each other and coexist. So I would actually be down for a lot of that, but then it's just kind of like, oh, it's over. But
yeah, I would have liked to have seen more of the world building where we find out, are zombies really normal? Like, is this something that, like, is it just these two, or like, is this something that's more ongoing? That, like, I feel like it was too contained.
Yeah, because they're trying to give us the big twist, which is fine, but do it quicker to get to that so we can get to some of the bigger stuff.
Yeah, so later on, when you see them at the very end and they're back at that bar, and obviously his face has now been destroyed from a shotgun, and no one seems to care.
Exactly.
And Sarah, that was my thought too. It's like, I would have loved to see that world building, and are these different ghouls or whatever, is it just commonplace to where no one cares because, like, oh yeah, they're just zombies.
They're all smacked out.
Yeah, they could have even done, like, in that final scene, like the bartender, walking up to them and being like, rough night, like, something that acknowledges that the bartender knew that, Jimmy Pickett was a vampire and Cammy was a zombie, and it's just how things go. Like,
or they pan out and like the whole place is just full of zombies. It's just like the zombie hangout bar.
And then you could have gone back to the conversation that Jimmy had with the bartender originally, and it's more so him looking for a victim to feast upon or something like that. And also, if the bartender is going to use the line "rough night," he should be turning into a werewolf at that point.
Oh, yeah. So yeah, this one. So there's a lot of potential of where they could have gone, but what they give us is just okay. I think maybe a little bit elevated because of some really good actors, especially for genre stuff. And I love Ewan McGregor unhinged. Like, Ewan McGregor as like normal stoic guy, fine. He's like, again, Dr. Sleep, he's fine. Obi-Wan Kenobi, he's fine. But when you get like Unleashed, like Birds of Prey, I really like that movie, partly because he just goes so off the wall in that movie. Now, Sarah, what's that Dr. Sleep thing in the background?
It was for when they did like the screenings here in town, it was like a photo thing where you could put your face in it, like Jack Nicholson in The Door.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, my rep, when they were cleaning out their office, he was getting rid of stuff, and he's like, "Do you want this?" And I was like, "Yes."
Yeah, I went to like on the first test screenings, and like Mike Flanagan was there.
Oh, nice.
For Dr. Sleep. That was really cool.
They did an advanced screening here, but it was at like 10 a.m. And so my husband had to work, and I ended up going with a friend, and so my husband still hasn't seen it.
Oh, really?
Oh, wow. I
which
haven't
is
seen it
sad
either.
because
Yeah, I think
it's a good movie. It's
it's good.
really solid.
It would have been better as a miniseries, I think, if they split it up like an HBO series.
I feel that way about almost anything that's over
Yeah,
2 hours at this point.
exactly.
I have no patience for anything over 2 hours. Even 2 hours for me is really hard. I'm like, no, y'all, like I just found out that the Five Nights at Freddy's movie is going to be 3 hours. And I'm like,
What?
yeah, it's
Why?
on Rotten Tomatoes. The Rotten Tomatoes time now says so it's
Oh my
mostly
god.
official. And I was like,
Damn.
I'm like, I'll go watch Willy's Wonderland. Have fun with that. Bye. You
Another movie
know.
I love
That's
dearly. But it's rare that I see a movie that's that long, and I'm like, oh, it needed to be that long.
Mm-hmm. Agreed.
And I saw Terrifier 2 in the theaters. I love Terrifier 2. But as I'm watching it, I knew how long it was gonna be. I'm thinking, like, man, here's 15 minutes they could have cut out. Here's 5 minutes they could have cut
You know
out.
why that movie's
Here's
so long? Because they did it with crowdfunding,
yes.
and so many people paid a lot of money to be killed by Art the Clown. So you got that dream sequence, that dreamy circus sequence,
Yes.
Oh,
Yes.
okay.
and that whole sequence does not need to be in the movie
Well,
at
it
all.
makes
You
that
could
didn't.
so much more sense.
Well, and
you
there's so
could
many
cut
scenes
that
like
all out, and it would have. I did not care for Terrifier 2. It was absolutely too long. I was bored out of my mind. I was like, this is I didn't dig on it. Like I liked the first one mostly. I think Art the Clown is a cool character concept, but I haven't seen an Art the Clown movie that I'm like, oh, that really nailed the
fair.
landing.
Like,
Like,
I think the next one is when he's going to get probably big funding, which means we'll have a chance to kind of, and hopefully he'll get an editor that's not himself. And
Yeah.
and I mean that like in the not a net. Well, it's a positive to have an editor. It's not you because like there's scenes in that which could have been cut out, but they're beautifully shot. I know why he kept them in because he's like, damn it, this looks so good. I don't want to cut this scene. And that's when someone to come in and be like, dude, it looks amazing. Save it for the Blu-ray.
I wish someone
let's
had done
trim
that
this
with
sucker
Ari
down.
Aster for Beau is Afraid,
I've heard the
because
same thing about that. I haven't seen
that
it yet.
movie
Oh,
was
I can't watch that
so
movie.
tedious. I saw an advanced screening of that one too, and I was like, there was no reason that needed to be 3 hours long. Like no,
Okay.
please stop.
And the opposite as when we have an episode like this, we're like, man, like you could have cut out all this fluff at the beginning and added in more, and it's always a thing I say when I watch those long movies. I'm like, you could have cut this out, and then I'm like, it was so long, but I really love this part of it, and I wanted that more fleshed out. And you didn't give that to me, so it's I'm also old, so once I hit, I just
I
can't
think
sit through it.
I firmly stand by my mental fix on the 70-minute horror movie. If you can give me a great story in 70 minutes, you have worked magic, because that is like the sweet spot. It's not too long, not too short.
Well, and I'll tell you what, if you give me a shitty movie in 70 minutes, at least it's only 70 minutes.
Right.
And I don't feel like
Well,
I just watched a found footage movie on Screenbox called Subject. And by the end of it, I was like, well, that was a fucking waste of my time.
I watched that one, I think, during Chattanooga.
Some great ideas during this movie, but the end didn't land. But I was like, it was only like 65 minutes. I'm not even angry. Like, I'm still happy I saw it.
all right.
Yeah, I
Well,
love
not
a
to
good.
go not to go too much further down. I watched Sleepaway Camp 2 the other night, and that's a movie where it's too short and they had to add that whole like dream recall sequence that recap the whole movie just to pad out the timing.
And see, Jason, did you see what's going to happen on Sleepaway Camp Anniversary Day now at the Joe Bob Drive-In?
Oh no, what's new? What's the new?
They're playing all the Sleepaway Camps in order.
Of course, yeah.
With Felicia Rose.
Yeah,
Come
yeah,
on.
yeah.
And how you're not coming out for that, Jason?
I just not.
You can sleep right here on the floor. Right here on the floor.
All right, going back to the episode though, this was directed, speaking of shorter length mediums, this was directed by Andrew Morahan, who's a very well-known music video director. He did all the big Guns N' Roses music videos, November Rain, Estranged. He did a bunch of music videos for Michael Jackson, Paul McCartney. And he also did Highlander 3, which means this and the last Tell Script episode were both directed by Highlander directors. So how's that for synergy?
Interesting.
Well, it
There-
makes
there-
sense why there's a dance number now in this
It makes a
movie.
dance number, and there was actually a lot of musical cues. I was wondering
Yeah.
about that. I
Oh,
was
man.
wondering, like trying to make it a little hip.
Going back to the bar scene where her finger is obviously still wet from his saliva and she rubs it on the fucking on the glass. I'm like, why would you do that? Some poor soul's got to come clean that glass behind you.
I'm like, do you want
No.
COVID? Because that's how you get COVID. Like,
We found the source of the COVID. 1996. Tell us in
I
the
feel
crypt.
like when I watch old movies now, like thinking about that from like a post, pandemic mentality, I'm like, oh, that's so gross. Oh, Contagion. Oh, contagious, gross. No. And
Man.
I'm just not about that.
I was watching for a podcast I listened to, watching the old WWE Raws from 1993, 1994, and the Bushwhackers used to come out and they would just grab fans in the front row and just lick their faces, like legit, just try and lick their faces. And I was like, for somehow that was, as a kid, I didn't really register that as being super gross. But an adult, I'm like, especially after going through COVID, I'm just horrified by this.
I mean, can we just like acknowledge for a minute how gross blowing out the candles on your cake is?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
Well, in front of a group of people, or
especially
especially
for, like,
kids.
especially kids who are like, like, oh,
it's make this cake better. Some spit and germs. Let's do it.
So you give whoever is blowing out a candle a cupcake to blow out a candle separately.
That's a good idea.
Yeah, that's what we did for my kid's birthday. We got like blowing out cupcakes. All right. Normally we do a comic comparison to the EC comic this was based on. Unfortunately, we weren't able to find it. We'll try to find it later. Maybe we'll do a drop in. The only synopsis I could find on it says that man joins family of zombies. So
I did some digging because I wanted to try to read it. I was like, oh, is it maybe like on Hoopla or something? Because they have a ton of comics.
Mm-hmm.
Or is it maybe in the one like omnibus that I have? But it was, all I found was that it was a very expensive comic.
Yeah, I saw that too.
Normally, it goes for about $2,000.
Yeah, normally Jody can find it online, but since he's incognito, we weren't able to get a hold of it. But we'll see if we can figure it out. All right, let's move to our episode rating. We do 0 to 5, 5 being the best, 0 being the worst. You can do half points. Excuse me, Sarah.
Oh, you're putting me on the spot.
I know. I guess in the spot.
I would go probably 2.5 out of 5.
Yeah.
Like it is perfectly serviceable. It is adequate. It's not below average. It's not above average. It's just there. I thought it was just fine to spend, 30 minutes of my life watching.
All right, Mondo.
Yep, I'm the same boat. 2.5. Don't think it was a great episode. Don't think it was a bad episode. Like the horror elements. Again, brought some really good stuff to the table, and then also but left a lot on the table too that could have been fleshed upon. But I think 2.5 is perfectly.
Yeah. I'm going 2.5 as well. That's feels exactly right down the middle. Like could have been better. Could have been a lot worse. I think the talent raised it. I think with lesser actors, it would have been really not watchable. But I think the production, I'll give also a shout out to production design. The costuming was really fun in this, and the sets are really cool. So but there's just a lot missing from it. All right. And now we turn it over to Uncle Al for his anecdotes. And we're back. All right, Mondo, give us your song of the day.
I have 2, and for good reason. The world of professional wrestling this week, as you know, I love professional wrestling, lost one of its legends in Terry Funk, who was also an actor. He played in Roadhouse. He played in Paradise Alley with Sly Stallone. He was responsible for Hulk Hogan being in Rocky 3. Fun fact. And he was also in Briscoe County, The Adventures of Briscoe County Jr. He was an Over the Top. And some other acting credits to his resume too, but possibly the greatest wrestler that ever lived, one of the greatest minds of the business, and just from anyone who ever met him. Like me and my buddy Phil met him in 2005 when we were young men going to Philadelphia to go watch the ECW Hardcore Homecoming, and he was nothing but just a awesome person to meet, and one of my favorite wrestlers in the history of wrestling. So for him, I picked a song by the Eagles, and I hate the fucking Eagles.
Wow, that's a big one.
I really don't hate the Eagles like the dude does, but he used to come out of the theme in ECW Desperado
Mm.
Just a really sad song when you listen to it. And Johnny Cash actually covered it later too.
Yeah, that's a great cover.
One of the rare times though, I do prefer the original to the cover. And it's not a knock on Johnny Cash, I understand, Jason, because I saw your judgmental stare.
No. I wasn't judging.
Mhm. But
That was my judgmental stare.
oh, it's still a great cover, don't get me wrong, but it's by the original better. So we'll go with the Eagles, Desperado in memory of Terry Funk, which really that death hit me pretty hard because granted he was 79 years old, lived a very full life, but still one of the guys that really cemented my love of professional wrestling at a young age. And as I grew older, learned to appreciate his back catalog even more. And then also WWF had a loss, and this ties into horror with Bray Wyatt. WWF wrestler passed away at the age of 36. Wyndham Rotunda was his real name. But when he first came into WWF, he was kind of like his gimmick was like a Southern Baptist kind of cult leader. And he had a really cool song he'd come out to, and it's by a band called Mark Crozer and the Rells. And I think the name of the song you'll find if you're looking for on Spotify or Apple Music is Live in Fear. And I believe the original name of it was actually I have it here. I wrote it down earlier. The original name of the song was called Broken Out in Love, which is a cool, it's a song you wouldn't expect a wrestler to come out to, but it fit the character so well. And then later on, its connection to horror is he eventually became the Fiend, which is a very horror forward character because Bray Wyatt was a huge horror movie geek. And Tom Savini actually created his masks and created a specialized title for him. And Tom Savini actually posts on Instagram a scene with the Bray Wyatt just goofing around in the studio. So 2 songs this week: Desperado by the Eagles and Live in Fear by Mark Crozer. And again, rest in peace. It's always sad when you see someone at the age of 36 people shouldn't be dying at 36. And it was a heart attack. They found out he had a heart issue last year, and then he got COVID really bad. So the heart attack came on because of the COVID. What they think, I don't know if they know that for sure or not. So I don't want to spread a rumor that I might not know. But still, many thoughts to his family out there. I doubt anyone who knows him is listening, but it still sucks to see anybody die that young. It's tragic.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Okay, we're gonna do something a little bit different for the rest of the episode since we have a horror foodie specialist.
Oh goodness!
I thought we'd go through some of our favorite Crypt episodes and do some come up with some food pairings.
Oh dang!
Put you on the spot a little bit. We'll help you out here. So first of all, what would you pair with this episode?
Honestly, I would go with a London dry gin martini.
Ooh.
Because they drink martinis in this. It's set in a bar. London gin is very different from French gin. And so it would be on theme with that. And I feel like they're drinking. I mean, you could also do a Bloody Mary if you really were feeling froggy, but this feels more like a gin martini kind of also, a vibe.
Yeah, zombies always, in my mind, are always very crusty. So like the dry, like very dry, like very, I don't know. They've just been.
Ewan McGregor looks moisturized.
Yeah, I mean, as you see, he constantly was worried about his face, so he probably used some skincare products.
Yeah, he was concerned with his skin.
There we go. All right, then let's go through some other of our favorite episodes. Are you familiar with Death of a Salesman? The Tim Curry one.
Tim Curry playing every character basically with Ed Begley.
That's the one with like the house, right? With the where he goes in and Tim Curry's like the old lady.
Yeah.
Yeah. Where is that one set?
I feel like it's somewhere in the South. I feel like it'd be like one of those like chicken done 3 ways or something like that.
Yeah, like maybe like a chicken pot pie. Because it's always like something under the crust, something sneaky, and you would add like a cool seasoning or something so that it's like unexpected or like an unexpected vegetable.
Okay, I like that too.
Like okra.
I would not put okra in a pot pie.
Exactly.
I would never put okra in a pot pie. Okra kind of, in my mind, either needs to be fried or go in gumbo. That's it. Like those for me, those are the 2 uses of okra.
All right. All right. And what about let's say cutting cards, the one with Lance Henriksen, and they're playing card games in Vegas.
I would probably go with another cocktail for that one. I would probably do like a whiskey drink.
Okay. Yeah.
Because I like when I think of like card players, like they're always like, drinking their like whiskey on the rocks. And I would probably do like a whiskey with like some bitters, some fancy bitters.
Okay.
I always feel bad when we make cocktail recipes because we always have like we use a lot of Bitterman's bitters, and they have a huge selection of hard to find, like you have to order them online basically kind of bitters. And so I always feel bad because I'm like, our recipes are sometimes like, oh, use this like New England bitters, and I'm like, oh, nobody's gonna have that one.
Yeah.
You can substitute bitters sometimes. You do get different flavors out of it, but like
Yeah, and especially because if we're not using like Angostura or something, we're using like something that is very specific.
yeah.
Like the New England, like there's one that my husband really loves. I think it's the Scarborough one, and it's got like a celery bitter, but it's also got some other stuff in it. So my husband loves bitters. That's his like whole. He's with Geeks Who Eat. He's the bartender.
That's awesome.
All right. And then top billing, that's the one with John Lovitz. And they do the Shakespeare play. It turns out they're all psychomaniacs.
I would do probably like, if it's English,
No.
like no English.
Well, like Shakespeare.
Shakespeare.
They're doing Hamlet.
Shakespeare. Okay, yeah. I'd probably do like something with like bangers and mash, like, but like make it bloody because if
Blood
they're
sausage.
crazy. Yeah, something like that, because you think like a British type sausage or European type sausage, and then they're all like psychopaths. Presumably, somebody's a cannibal.
Yeah, oh yeah, there's always a cannibal in the mix.
I mean, in my life, there's always a
There's always a cannibal.
I think I've said that too many times in movie reviews. I'm like, this would have benefited by some cannibalism, like being just tossed in there. Like I expected, like if you have a backwoods horror movie and you don't have cannibals, you messed up. Like you did it wrong. Like,
Yeah, going back to the menu for 1 second, I love that they actually didn't go that route, because that's from all the trailers and everything. That's completely what I was expecting. Like it was kind of like a fresh situation.
I feel like I don't think Searchlight would have done it
Mhm.
because they had already released Fresh that year.
Right.
So I don't think they would have gone with two cannibalism movies.
I didn't make
Right.
that association between the two movies, but like I like that they kind of, everywhere you thought they were going to go, they went the other
Yeah,
way.
they kept it with food, only
Mhm.
food. But they totally, in the menu, they totally give away how it's going to end in the beginning.
Well, yeah, if you're paying, yeah, you still don't know how.
Yeah, because Hong Chow says the line, we only burn things intentionally.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just like, it sets the tone.
All
The
right.
second time I watched that movie, I lost my mind.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Because
The
I
second
picked
time
that up and I was like, oh, no.
So I watched that in the theater, and then by myself. And then later on, I got my wife to watch it, and I was just like watching her reaction to everything.
Yeah.
All right. Next one is Yellow. That's the World War II episode with Kirk Douglas.
I actually did this recipe for Dunkirk. I would do spam hand pies. Because spam and potatoes were a very popular food to eat during World War II, because
I'm sorry, this is World War One, but yeah.
World War One, I would still probably go with some sort of like wartime. I would still go with like a spam type or something like that you can eat out of like a metal kind of bento box style deal.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's how I would roll with my life. Something snacky MRE style.
There we go.
Yeah.
Next one is Television Terror. That's the one where the news crew goes into a haunted house.
Oh. I would do a big bowl of popcorn, honestly. Because like when you think of like people watching TV,
mm-hmm.
and it's always in movies, like even like for Hocus Pocus, when they're not watching movies, they're watching like the news, but they're settling it, with a big bowl of popcorn. And like Arachnophobia, they're watching Wheel of
Yeah.
Fortune and eating the big bowl of popcorn. So I always associate like 90s TV watching with like a giant bowl of popcorn.
Love it. All right, and then the number 7, the new arrival, the one with Zola Rubinstein.
Oh, I don't know. It's been so long since I've actually watched most of these episodes. I do a lot of my recipe theming based on like where they're located and that kind of, theming. We
This is
do a
like
lot of
this one felt a little bit like Frasier, so let's just say Seattle.
Seattle.
Well, there's a
Okay.
television, there's a radio psychiatrist.
I love comparing it to Frasier. That's pretty great.
Yeah.
Maybe something with cigarettes, because I feel like every radio show host always is smoking a cigarette. Like that's kind of like the like.
This guy would definitely have like a pipe, like a cigar pipe, tobacco pipe.
I would do, if that was the case, if he was smoking a pipe, I would do some sort of tobacco smoke cocktail. There was a bar in town that did this, and so it was called the Lawless, and it was a whiskey drink. And what they would do is they would make a pile of tobacco on like a metal, like a little like cast iron thing, light it on fire, put the glass on top of it so it smokes in the glass. Then you take the glass off, and while it still has the smoke, like some of the smoke in there, you pour the cocktail in. And so then when you're drinking it, you get that like that nose of like the tobacco. So I would do probably something like that.
Nice.
Yes.
There's a lot of places now making those smoke cocktails. They're interesting. They're interesting. It is hit or miss for me, but they're pretty interesting.
I've seen the videos, never had one.
They're not all equal. Like that, a smoked cocktail needs to be done by someone who really knows what they're doing in terms of like flavor balancing, because you can have it be too smoky. You let it sit in there too long, then you get that bitter like char flavor. And if you're going for a bitter char flavor, you might as well just be drinking an Isla Scotch, which is peaty and iodine and briny, and you might as well, if you want to drink a fireplace, drink that. Like I know this from experience because that is what my husband drinks, and kissing him after he takes a sip is like kissing a fireplace.
Ugh.
I do kind of want to try that just for I try a sip of that just out of curiosity.
It's it's not bad. Like if you get like the Lafroig like 10-year, it's not bad.
All right, next one is we'll do House of Horror. That's the fraternity episode.
I would do a beer cocktail, 100%.
What kind of beer cocktail?
Oh, we did one for Joe Bob for one of his summer specials that was like a Lone Star Rita. And so we used Lone Star beer, and we paired it with like margarita stuff.
Ooh, that's cool.
And it was delicious. And we 3D printed drive-in speaker cocktail picks.
Cool.
And this was during COVID, so I had some local mutant friends, and we drove around and delivered little Lone Star Rita kits to all of them, and I hand painted cocktail picks for all of them. And we did a little snack mix with some spicy peanuts and chips and popcorn, and we have a lot of Joe Bob inspired recipes on our website. If you're ever looking for something to like eat while you're doing the last drive-in, I have you covered, I promise.
I love that.
Nice. All right, we'll do 2 more. We'll do Dead Right, which is the one with Demi Moore, and where she gets the fortune teller to tell her that she's going to marry a heavy set man, and then earn the ton of money.
Oh, I remember that.
There's a lot of gross eating in that. If I remember,
there's a lot of gross eating in that one.
Oh,
it's one of those things in cinema where they just show someone eating for just too long. Like
Jeffrey Tambor.
I don't enjoy the gluttonous like insult of heavy people in film, and that reminds me of that. And like it's just like it's so mean and demeaning. And
I mean, they're intentionally trying to grossify the act of something that everybody does every single day.
Yeah, exactly. I would probably, if I was going to do a food pairing for that, I would do like bites with foie gras, because she wants to be rich. And
Mm.
how else you could even play it down and do like chicken livers and like do fried chicken liver like bites, and because like people want to be rich and they want to eat foie gras, but all you can afford is chicken liver. Like
Right.
I think that would be a fun little
That's
like
funny.
play on that. Chicken livers are actually really delicious
I
too.
like chicken livers or chicken gizzards. I love chicken gizzards.
I don't think I've ever tried them, but I would. I'm an
No?
I'm an adventurous eater.
I'll eat anything once.
Yeah, I'll eat
Yeah,
as long as it's cooked. I'll eat anything cooked once.
Yeah,
I mean,
I'll
I've eaten
try
some
pretty
raw
much
stuff
anything.
too, so
I'm a little iffy if it's raw, like if it's adventurously speaking.
yeah, I won't do chicken or pork raw. That's not in my comfort zone.
All right. And then to wrap things up, we'll do the episode What's Cooking? Speaking of cannibals, with Christopher Reeves. He has the diner, and then they run out of meat, so they decide to start murdering their patrons, including singer Meatloaf, to make steaks out of.
I would do a steak and eggs. Like if it's diner food, absolutely. Like you got to do steak and eggs and make it look a little human. Maybe trim your steak so it doesn't look like a standard ribeye or a standard like T-bone. Like
what cut would you use? Would you use a cube?
Honestly, I like a good ribeye, so I would probably get a ribeye, but I would trim it down a little bit so that it doesn't look so ribeye. But I would also do it like medium rare so that it's still a little pink.
There you go. Just do like the spinal, whatever muscle it is, the outside muscle.
You could also, you could do pork chops and eggs also, because they always, say that human tastes like pork.
That's
and
what they say.
They do call it long pig. So, you could really play around with that a lot. We wanted to do a recipe for fresh, but we decided that it would gross too. We ended up doing a cocktail instead of a a food recipe because cannibalism is always a little iffy for people.
Never have too much cannibalism.
I agree, but apparently not everybody lives my life and has a coffin-shaped bookcase full of cannibalism movies.
It gets people all squeamish. I get
it. All right. Well, that wraps up another episode. Sarah, thank you so much for joining us. Where can people find you?
I'm on social media everywhere. Spooky Sarah Says, Geeks Who Eat, and Final Girls Feast. Like we try to keep it simple. 2geekswhoeat.com, because some Yahoo has geekswhoeat.com and has since before we started and doesn't do anything with it. So don't go there. Go to 2geekswhoeat.com and then finalgirlsfeast.com. And then you can also find us wherever podcasts air pretty much.
All right. Well, thank you. Next week, we're not entirely sure what we're covering. We'll let everyone know. It'll be a bit of a surprise. We just have to figure it out. But I'm sure it will be great as always. We appreciate everyone for listening. We would really appreciate if you would give us a rating or review on iTunes, a rating on Spotify. Check out our YouTube for videos of these podcasts. And with that, we thank you for listening to Dads from the Crypt.
Goodbye.
Follow Dads from the Crypt on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, or I will follow you to the grave. No, seriously, you really should watch. But be careful what you ask for. You may get it.